So Miss Stenzel, um, can you tell us a little bit about what you do and generally what discipline it falls under?
Well, I'm a chemist. I studied chemistry, and but what I'm doing today is polymer chemistry.
Polymer.
So polymer chemistry is widely associated with things like plastic and plastic products and cheap products. But what we actually do is we try to make nanoparticles for drug delivery. So we're really looking at sort of the high-end application of polymer science. So we make very, very small plastic particles, put drugs inside, and hope we can enhance, in particular, cancer treatment by doing that.
So you were talking about how you would use polymers as a drug delivery. Could you go a bit more into detail about that?
Yeah. So basically, when people undergo cancer treatment, they're usually injected a lot of cancer drugs over several hours, and most of the cancer drugs don't really reach the target. And on top of that, a lot of these cancer drugs are difficult to administer because they're hydrophobic, for example. So what we are doing, we're putting them into little nanoparticles, and these nanoparticles are water soluble. So we don't have then any issues with solubility anymore. But the next thing is also, it's quite well known that these nanoparticles, they seem to preferably accumulate in the tumor. And so the nanoparticles then sit there in the tumor. Your tumor can't get rid of them because of poor drainage, and drugs leach out very slowly. So you basically create a little reservoir of drugs that last for a really long time.
Okay. In your field of work, do you work with other people in the same work?
Yes, definitely.
Yep. So, how important do you think kind of the aspect of teamwork is? And
it's very, very important actually, because today research looks a lot in the interface between two areas. So if you're working in my field, for example, you have to be a good chemist and a good medical scientist, which I'm not. I'm a good chemist. So I work with people in hospitals who actually can guide us on the medical aspect. So because this is absolutely not my field, I suppose you guys know more about medical science than I do. But I'm really good at making nanoparticles, and that's sort of my field. And I think that probably applies to most areas, that you can only do really good science if you're willing to work in a team, and if you sort of give up a little bit of your big ego and say, well, I'm happy to be in a team. And I think it's very interesting. I really enjoy that because I learn a lot as well. So I never stop learning, and I learned a lot in the last few years how cancer works. And no, it's really exciting actually working with other people in the field. At the same time, I have to learn to explain things on a different level. Because if I sort of draft a few chemical structures, that might not mean a lot to other people. So I have to think about how do I present my research to people outside my field. So it's a challenge for me as well. Yeah.
The skills that you've developed, you'd say that you would have already had some of your own skills, and during teamwork and working in your field, would you agree that you have developed more skills and also refined the skills that you already had?
Oh, definitely, yes, yeah, because sometimes challenges are given to me. For example, a collaborator came up and said, well, we have this protein drug, can we deliver that somehow? And then I had to think about my own chemistry again. How can we do that in an efficient way? So it's certainly a constant learning process also, because people throw challenges at me. And that's why I need to think about how can I understand my own chemistry a little bit better.
Yep. So obviously everyone has their weaknesses. Do you ever take time to recognize these weaknesses and work towards improvement? And do you think that this reflection of yourself is very important for benefiting yourself to suit the professional requirements of your job?
Oh, that's a very deep question. No, definitely. I think it's quite important to recognize your weaknesses. Although I think it's also important not to think too much about your own weaknesses. It's sort of, you recognize them and then you think about a solution. If you think too much about your own weaknesses, you're never going to go anywhere.
So you need a balance.
You definitely need a balance. I mean, I'm not arrogant, thinking I don't have any weaknesses. I think it's very important constantly go a step back and think about it. But at the same time, you just need to move on. Yeah.
So has there been times where it's been hard for you to work with your colleagues because they were hard to deal with, or they had other perspectives than you?
I don't mind having, if people have other perspectives. I think it's everybody's entitled to their opinion, how they see things. I'm happy to accept other perspectives. Sometimes you just have to find common ground. Of course, you meet people who are impossible to work with, but not because they have another perspective. That's fine. It's just because maybe they don't know what teamwork is. You know, I think as long as people are around the table and they really acknowledge teamwork is very important, it doesn't matter if people have different opinions. You just work on it, or you just say, well, this time we try your idea, next time we try my idea, and that's fine. But you certainly find people who think they need to run the show every time and all the time, and that's sort of where you have to maybe get out.
The last question is something that kind of was on our notification.
Yeah.
So if there was a movie made about your entire life,
Yeah.
What would the title be? What would you want the genre to be, and who would you want to act as part for you?
Okay, so I got this. Somebody asked me this question before. Then I was not prepared, and I'm still not prepared. So my answer was there. Oh well, it would be a comedy. Yeah, it probably would be a comedy in because nothing ever tragic would happen in my life, because you have sort of this typical comedy, you know, some light and fluffy romantic comedies. All looks bad in the beginning and all turns out well in the end, and that's probably what it sums up. That things are sometimes quite hard, but somehow things turn out to the better, and not always how you expect it. You know, it's probably a good idea never to be too focused on something. There's always a plan B, and it turns out plan B was actually much better than plan A. So yeah, I think it would probably be a comedy, and it would be along the line, oh, it's all good. I'm not sure who's going to play me. I propose Cate Blanchett because I think she's a great actress, but yeah, not sure who would play me.